The world is saved. The living room's dark, save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lions, how's it going?
It's going pretty good outside of a thing that happened today that has nothing to do with gaming. So I'm going to save this whole story for the after show.
Yeah. Which people can get the after show if they... No, it's not time yet.
No, it's not. But I mean, well, it could be. Should we explain what we're doing first?
Yes, you should explain what we're doing.
So we're old and we're tired. And we wanted to make sure we would have the space to give games, kind of what they deserved before we were going to review them. There are some gaming podcasts I listen to that are weekly and they play a different game every single week. And frankly, I don't know how they do it. Like I guess they don't have other hobbies, or maybe they don't have spouses or children, or maybe their children and their spouses are like part of their gaming hobby. Like I can't fit in the amount of time I often want to give to games that we play, right? And so we were talking about like, how do we make sure we have more time to play a game, but also like we still like recording every other week. So how do we make sure we still are putting out that sweet content machine? Because the monster needs to be fed. And also we enjoy talking to each other, some bullshit. So,
or whatever,
or whatever. So, what we settled on is, games will now get a month instead of 2 weeks, which means a review episode every other episode, and those alternate episodes will now be. I'm gonna do it. Do you want me to commit it to the record right now?
There will be let's do it.
No Nostalgia Goggle episodes.
Yeah.
Now it can never be changed ever now.
No.
So
it is set in stone.
These will be episodes where we're still going to talk about gaming. It's still going to be like all us talking about the games we're playing, but not reviewing any one specific game. So we're both going to bring some topics and have more of a general chat. It may skew retro if we're playing retro games. It may skew modern if we're playing modern games. So this will be the end of new Nostalgia Goggles. So we're not going to review any more new games anymore, because if we're playing new games, we can talk about them here.
Right.
And I suspect, based on a few of the things I already have in my backlog, like, oh, these are games we might have considered finding a way to play for Nostalgia Goggles. So that actually thematically will carry on just fine. Also, I decided this because I want to keep the shilling special. We will still do a little front-loaded shilling, because you gotta do a little front-loaded shilling. But
you gotta shill. Yeah.
But I want you to save the names of the special patrons for the review episodes only.
Which makes sense, you know.
Right.
I may once in a while do names on this one if I had like some throwaway thing that I wanted to do, like like when I did
B-roll.
Well, no, like when I did the Sailor Moon lyrics, where it was just like,
that's fair.
Or when I did some of the Darkest Dungeon things, where I'm like, this is actually more for me than for anyone else, because you get the good stuff on the actual episodes. If I'm gonna do a side slinging thing, it's gonna be on this.
Yeah, that's fair. And I also, as these are going to be more timely than the review episodes, which I would like to believe are more timeless, more people are going to hear those on the review episodes because they're going to seek those out, right? People come literally from all corners of the world to listen to our reviews, which I'm saying that, and it's like a little sarcastic, but it's also kind of true. Like, we literally have listeners in countries that I would not have imagined we would have listeners in, which is sort of amazing.
Yeah, it is. But it is a little, it's very marketing. So we have people coming from every corner of the world. When really, looking at the numbers, it's like we have person that come from every corner of the world, right?
Yes. Yes, at least one person has come from the various corners.
And when we say, because we have people in certain countries that listen to us, right? And then on some of the other countries, we have person that has listened to us.
Yeah. Which, if you are a listener and you think you're in the weirdest location and you want to reach out, one of the ways you can do that, see, now I've brought it back to shilling. One of the ways that you can do that is you can go, years of practice, man, is you can go onto our website nostalgiagoggles.audio, and you can fill out that contact form. You can hit both of us on Twitter. We even have a goddamn Discord now. So if you want to talk to us in like semi-real time, because we both have jobs, you can do that. That's a thing you can do. All these links and all that crap are in the show notes. So go find that there. If you want to support us, you can always leave a rating and review, or, just find a game that you love and recommend that review episode to a friend. Or if you want to go crazy, you can support us on Patreon. Those people get the after show. And if they support at a high enough level, we will even shout them out, sometimes with names on these episodes, sometimes not. But those people are Michael, Jacob, Yarno, Jason, John, and Kevin. And they help us, have the financial resources to make this possible. Plus they get the after show, which is pretty cool for them.
Yes. I mean, it's cool for everyone,
It's especially cool for them.
I mean, yeah, because they get to hear us swear,
That's true.
Not everybody gets to hear that.
That's true. So for these conversations, I thought it would be fun because we've gotten questions about like, hey, why do you do this? Or what about that? Or, oh, you didn't dive very deep on this thing. And I've been kind of like slowly collecting those over the ages. So one of the things that we get asked all the time that I feel like the answer is not that exciting, but at least now like I can commit it to tape. And then if anyone ever is like, oh, hey, what about this? Now I can do the cross promotional thing of saying like, oh, go listen to this episode where I explain the whole thing. Right.
Exactly.
So we got a listener question in our mailbag that is, why is the theme song to Nostalgia Goggles, The World Is Saved? And the answer is kind of dumb. I really love that song. So somebody did, I don't know if it's the official video or if it was like a fan video, but the way I learned about that song is there's a like pixel art music video that alternates between the games that the protagonist is playing and his actual life, just like the song kind of alternates between his real life and the games that he's playing. And I just like completely, it was one of those things where like I saw the YouTube video and I just watched it like 1,000 times on repeat. Like and I don't usually do that, but I just completely fell in love with the idea of like, this is such a great way, were I ever to be in a position where I had to explain to someone like, oh, why do you like video games so much? It's like, well, just go watch this YouTube video. And if you come out on the other side of that, like, because the song's like 3.5 minutes, we only use a portion of it. If you come out on the other side of that and you still don't understand like why someone who plays video games, then you're just never going to get it. Like this is pretty much as clear visually and orally of an argument that you could make to someone. Like, why do you read books? Why do you watch movies? Why do you play video games? It's basically the same, except you actually get to do the things, right? And I love the music, and the song has like all these super dramatic swelling parts that most people probably don't hear because they listen to a podcast on their phone speaker sped up and the song probably sounds like crap, but it's a really fun piece of music. And I contacted Danny when we were getting ready to start this show, and I said, hey, I love this song. Can I please use this as the theme song to this like video game themed podcast? And he was just the nicest dude. He was like, yeah, totally. No problem. I love that you love it. My music is there for people to enjoy. So if that'll help people hear it, that like, absolutely. Thank you for checking. But yes, do whatever you want with it. And to this day, I still get copyright takedown notices from YouTube because their automated robot sees that the song is owned by him. And every time I tell them, but I have permission. I literally have written permission from the author, but it's a robot, so the robot doesn't care.
Yeah, the robot's like, no, I don't think so. I think that because the way that it came to me was you said, hey, I got a cool intro, song, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. And then I listened to the whole thing. I was like, this is pretty good. And to your point, I think that first of all, I don't think that anybody listening to this podcast is going to be hopefully in the crowd of, video games are dumb.
No, probably not.
I mean, the people listening to this right now are a pretty self-selecting group. But that being said, is that I do remember, is that I think one of the things that, and this is a little bit more philosophical than we probably need to go into, but safe space, is that is video games. We grew up with games being for children, and they were for us, right? But then we all grew up, and we were like, hey, this is not for kids, you know?
I still want more of this, please.
Right, because originally video games were lobbed in with games like Candyland, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh, it can be a novel, or it can be this other thing, or it can be this other thing, but it is art because it can make you feel feelings like art does. And I still, though, remember at one point us being in Kung Fu and just having a discussion, and one of our friends saying, well, you know, when I get older, I'm not going to play video games.
Yeah,
and,
sorry, for the listeners, we're having this discussion at like 22, right? So we're not 12-year-olds when this discussion is happening. And this person literally used the phrase, when I get older. And it's like, most people who are 22 are kind of smart me about being an adult already. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. So it was you, me, for the purposes of this story, it was you, me, person A and person B. So person A says, oh, when I get older, I'm not going to play video games anymore. And we had just been discussing the value of video games, basically what I just said. And I believe you said, why? And he said, well, video games are for children. So when I am no longer a child, I will cease to play video games. And both of us like looked at each other in horror as both of our minds are trying to grind as fast as they can to fit, because it's just like when Homer says to Apu, it's like, come on, Apu, it's a Civil War reenactment, so we need plenty of Indians to shoot. And it's like, I don't know what part of that to correct first, right? You know? So we're both trying to come up with a cogent argument, and then all of a sudden person B from like across the room goes, why do you bother to come to it like this, man? You know, and yeah. That. So the moral of that story is that if you listen to the song and you're like, nah, man, I still think video games are just for kids. And it's like, then why are you here? Why are you coming to stuff like this, man?
Yeah. No, I like that. If somehow you downloaded a gaming podcast and listened to it, and then also sought out the entirety of the song that is used as the intro and outro music to that gaming podcast, and you somehow still have questions, go away.
Yeah, why are you here? This isn't for you, you know? It's like that.
We laid it all out there. You have all the information you could possibly need to decide if this is for you.
Yeah. Like, hey, here's this nice thing that I think you'd enjoy. That's dumb. Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's the door.
Yeah.
You know.
So are you ready to talk about video games?
Let's talk about video games.
All right.
Let's
so
talk about it.
What are you playing, and why should I care?
What I am playing currently is two games, and normally this is kind of the way it goes. I have the game that I am obsessively playing, and normally obsessively play for about 3 months, and then I have the new game I'm playing with Teddy. So those two things will probably be pretty wildly split. You know, what are you playing? I'm playing God of War and Candyland. But no, I'm playing.
If they're ever like close, like you're not sure someone would be able to figure it out, like maybe we make them guess.
Ooh, yeah. Well, so see if you can guess this one. The game Moving Out and Darkest Dungeon.
Okay. So I mean I can't guess because obviously I know your family.
Well, right.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, go ahead, write in, call, subscribe, go outside of your house and scream. I don't think we've been getting a lot of
classic. Holy
right?
crap! That we need like a mug or a T-shirt or something.
Yeah. If you want to contact me, go outside of your house and scream. Yeah. So I've been playing Darkest Dungeon. The reason why you should care about Moving Out is it is a truly delightful game to play with a young child, because it's like, you remember the game Co-op? You know?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I do. I just did not expect that to be the comparator.
It is that game, but like you're working as a team to move somebody out of an apartment, but it has that type of physics to it. So all of your inputs are a little delayed, you know?
Oh, I just realized that when you have talked to me about Moving Out, I was picturing the game Unpacking, which is like a super game. Zen chill game. So Moving Out is a co-op-like.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
No. Okay. I'm glad I've not recommended this to anyone.
No, so it's great because literally the point of the game is to get the person moved out, right? And so you have like the 10 to 20 things you've got to get out of the house, and it's got to get out of the house and into the moving truck by any means necessary. You are allowed to break windows, break doors. You're encouraged to do all this sort of stuff. In fact, in order to get like a gold medal, you have to do some of those things. You can press, if you're both holding either side of a heavy thing, if you press square, you kind of start to rock it back and forth and can swing it. So like one of the best ways to clear some of the levels is to throw furniture out of the second story so that way it lands on the first story and then somebody can like catch it and run it into the truck, you know? It is delightful to play with a 6-year-old, you know, because
my misconceptions were prevalent, but you have sold me completely now.
And then there is, of course, Darkest Dungeon, which is where the main thrust of my notes will be on discussion topics and things like that. So that is a great game. It does horror really, really well. And this is one game that I played a whole lot, and I go back to at least once a year. It's a blast. And in this particular time, I went back to it for a very specific reason, because I have a coworker that, I recommended it to, and he started playing it and he's like, this game's pretty awesome. I'm like, yeah, oh no, I'm back into it now.
All day. It's just like he said its name 3 times and like Beetlejuice, you just appeared and started playing it.
Yeah. Well, especially because he said, oh, I think I got this killer combination of people. And I said, yeah. And he's like, yeah, I stacked this and stacked that. And as he's saying it, like his voice is receding back and just falling into the Darkest Dungeon. But what are you playing and why should I care?
Has the second one come out yet?
It's in
early
beta.
access or whatever.
It's in early access or beta or something like that. But it's supposed to come out for the PlayStation, I think, early next year. I think February rings a bell.
Okay, so future topic for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Here's the sad thing, though. I've probably poured 180 hours into this game. I have never beaten it.
Really?
Really, it's tough, dude. I
did not realize that. I mean, the game loop is such that unless you deeply care about the narrative, I don't feel like you have to finish the narrative to continue enjoying it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you definitely don't. And then also too, I mean, like it's hard, and it's a roguelike that where, when a character dies, they're just dead, and there's no saving, there's no undoing. So, the interesting thing is the Darkest Dungeon, right? With the eponymous, area of the game.
Because it's from the title.
Maybe. I forget what titular means, but I know eponymous is like the thing that it's named after. You look that up.
Ooh, I will do that. Hey, we can do research. Holy crap.
Yeah. Oh my God.
A whole world is opened up.
Yeah. I found this called the internet. Some weird stuff on there, but some good stuff too,
Mostly weird.
Yeah. I mean, by unit volume, I mean, God, yes. So you can go to the Darkest Dungeon really early in the game. I think once you have a character that's level 3, you could go hit it up. You won't survive it. It will destroy you. But the thing is that, so right now I'm in the phase of the game where, and for additional reasons, it's worse this time, where I'm like, all right, I've beaten all of the low level bosses. I've beaten all of that. I've got a bunch of these buildings made. I've got a bunch of characters that are level 6. I gotta go into the Darkest Dungeon. But what if they die, man? I can't bring them back. It's just, but but the game will never be beaten if I don't do this, So I'm at that weird tipping point where I'm like, I don't know, man. Like if I just walk away right now, they all survive, like they will just live on. But
they could. Isn't the place they live in like horrible though? Maybe sending them in there is a kindness.
Well, so that's the weird thing is that, so they don't live in the hamlet. They have come there as workers, So like they're mercenaries, right? I think he says, because the ancestor has this amazing voice. Where he's like, like mercenaries and outlaws, brigands and heroes, fools and corpses. It's like, yeah. And so that's the thing is that they come, and so there's 2 ways that they can leave, right? Which is they die, or you can dismiss them, right? And sometimes you dismiss them, and so the way I'm playing it is a little bit different, and I'll save that. But like, you can just dismiss them because they're too broken, like their stress is too high, they've got too many diseases, and you just dismiss them. And then my 2 favorite ways, the things that he says, because every time you dismiss somebody, the ancestor says a line, right? Is he says, never suffer the lame horse or the broken man, he says that. He says, this one has become vestigial. They are of no more use to us, And then he says,
such word choice.
I know, right? And he says, then he goes like, wide eyes a hunched back and a stumbling gait. This one is of no more use to us. You know, it's like, yeah, you basically drove this person insane and then sent them back into the world. A broken human. And it's like,
thanks for working at Ancestor Corp.
Yeah, that you know, you can find your final paycheck. You don't know where it is. You don't even know who I am. Get
out there in the woods
with the dogs.
Yeah,
but
just let him out of the side of the carriage. Like, you're free now.
But yeah, so when we get to the meaty stuff, I've got, because I found a way to make this notoriously hard game even more difficult. And
cool.
Yeah, because I did this to me. But what are you playing, and why should I care?
Titular and eponymous are synonyms. So
excellent. Yeah. I thought that they were, but I knew. I'm like, I know eponymous is right. But
I was really afraid there was going to be some like niggling little difference where it's like, one of them is technically more accurate than the other, but it seems like they're just straight synonyms.
Excellent.
Man, doing research, wild. I am playing sort of Nier Automata finally, because
nice. Yep.
You played that years ago.
I never played it. I just heard a lot of reviews about it.
Why did I think you had played it?
Because the ending is one that I've heard deconstructed as like a way to actually do a good thing in a video game as opposed to selfishly doing good things.
Yes.
And I talked about it at length, which absolutely could have given you the idea that I played it, but yes. I did not.
No, but that is the way you talked about the ending, and I've seen like YouTube videos and stuff about like the philosophy in the game. I was like, okay, I'm going to finally get around to this. So like I had some extra bucks sitting around in Steam specifically. And I was like, okay, I'm going to like, I got to spend it on a game. So I'm going to finally buy this game and start it. And then work nonsense happened. And I haven't given up on it, but I haven't played it in like a week or two. And I'm also finishing up Trials and Tribulations, which is the third Phoenix Wright game in the original trilogy, which after we recorded that episode and I was allowed to do research, I did confirm originally the three games were written as one cohesive story, right? So it's one, like, this is how everything goes for these characters at this time in their life, right? Some people live, some people die, things are happy, things are sad, but like this is their story.
Their story.
Yeah. And then they went on and made crossover games and prequels and sidequels and stuff and whatever. But like the original three games, the reason every single list says those three games are the best three games is because they were so much more like pure, right? Like, we want to tell this story about these characters. We're going to use these mechanics. And all the way up through the third game, they haven't added or changed anything, right? So it's just
it's like Avatar: The Last Airbender, right? You know, where it's like, why is Avatar so good? Because book 1, book 2, and book 3 are all part of this cohesive story, you know? Like, yeah, it's amazing, because then at the end of season 3, they were like, we're making a lot of money, we should do a season 4. No, the story's over. We told the story.
Yeah, we're done. This was a story. We could tell another story, but this story's done. That's actually my new gold standard for that in television is Gravity Falls.
Yep.
Because and the only reason I say that is, even like, I hold that to an even higher standard than Avatar, is because it does the exact same thing, but in an even more distilled way, because it is only 2 seasons. The seasons, I think, are actually shorter, and every episode, like, if you haven't watched Gravity Falls, first watch it. And every episode that feels like, oh, this is like a fluff episode, no, they're not. They all pay off. There's 100% payoff in that show, and that's incredible, right? And the thing is, Avatar is like such a close second, because even the fluff episodes are still good and interesting, and there's character development, but there are some that if they lift it out, it wouldn't change anything, right? Gravity Falls has none of that.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd say I still love Avatar because of all of that amazing payoff, and also just the philosophy behind it is just so solid. I actually used that recently because I don't think I told you I started teaching Kung Fu at the local rec center, you know?
You did not tell me that.
Yeah.
That's going to show up in the after show.
But the funny thing is that, you know, so I was talking to one of the guys after, you know, the session, and I said, like, do you have any questions? I said, so many questions. And I said, cool. So, like, what do you have? And I spoke with him for a little bit, and he said, like, just got one more question for you. And I said, sure, what's up? And he says, what can I check online to, like, get more information on this? And I said, have you familiar with Eastern philosophy? And he said, yeah. And I said, you've read the Tao Te Ching? He goes, yeah. And I said, do you remember the parable about the cup? And he goes, no. And I was like, well, the thing that makes a cup valuable is the fact that it's empty. So you can come in here with a full cup, but I will not be able to put any additional liquid into it. So if you want to learn Kung Fu from me, just come with an empty cup. And he was like, that's amazing. And just suddenly I was like, did I just grow a 3-foot long white beard? You know, like in that one moment.
Oh, well, where'd this beard of wisdom come from?
But yeah, so to your point is yeah, it's the Phoenix Wright saga has like that nice crisp manner, and you can tell with games like that, right? It just has when you're like, man, that's a pretty tight game series. It's like, then it was probably written that way, you know?
Well, and every weird character that shows up in the first two games that like then goes away, they all eventually come back in a way that is meaningful, right? So like, it's like, oh, this is just the person that's involved in this case. Oh, wait, they're back. Like, okay, they're back because they're now like their orbit is decaying into Phoenix's like main story. So some people's orbit is like way out there and they just like kind of dip in like Haley's Comet style, right? Like they come close, but it's very seldom. And then you have like other characters that are like the moon and are just right there with you, like title locked all the time. And I'm super proud of this analogy. I really, really like what I've done with my day.
Just proud of what I've done today.
Yeah. I also eventually want to talk about a game called Neon White, mostly because I want to like foist it on you. Like I sort of really want you to play it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'll give it a shot. I recently got the PlayStation Extra or whatever, where I can rent a bunch of PlayStation games and stuff. So, yeah. Have you heard about that? It's kind of cool.
I know that it exists, and what I specifically learned about it was, am I going to be paying any more money now? And is there anything in the more expensive tiers that I definitely want to start paying money for? And the answer was no, and maybe. So like that, I just wanted to make sure like my monthly is not suddenly going to jump up when they're like, oh, it's, $20 a month now instead of 10, or it's, $150 a year now instead of 100 or whatever. So like I knew I would keep the rights I had for the amount I was paying, and that they were adding more stuff.
Right. Yeah. So it's an additional $30 a year, so it's and the thing, so that means that if it keeps you from aberrantly buying one game that you wouldn't have liked, it paid for itself. And it is one of the reasons why I got it is because it is, in my opinion, the modern day equivalent of everybody going to Blockbuster and picking the game that you were renting for that weekend. So now Teddy and I sit down on a Saturday and I say, you get to rent a game. What game do you want to try? And he then peruses the library and says, that one looks cool. I'm like, let's download it. Let's give it a shot. Ooh,
such generosity. When my kids are trying to pick music, because like we always listen to music at meal times, they want to look at the album art on my phone, and I'm like, no, from memory. What do you want? The internet is infinite.
Yes, there's too much. Well, and he'll go through, and the nice thing is that Teddy automatically, some of like the more intense games, he doesn't even ask about them. He doesn't see them. He goes like, oh, this one looks like a cartoon, so. Yeah,
I guess the cover of like Call of Duty Modern Warfare probably doesn't really speak to a young child because it's like super gritty and brown and green.
Yeah, it's supposed to be the one that's jumping out and all over the place. But yeah, what's Neon White about?
So Neon White is basically like a 3D Celeste game. And the reason I say that is because it is precision platforming in 3D, which generally is terrible. So what makes this game interesting is they ask you to do precision platforming in a really broad definition of success, which means if you are willing to put up with the things that make 3D precision platforming difficult, there are higher rewards for performing at a higher level. But to just feel like you did something cool and to finish the level at a big scare quotes high level of success, you actually don't have to be all that good until the end, when there's a massive difficulty spike. And I actually still, as of recording, have not finished this game because the difficulty spike at the end is bananas. So what makes it like kind of a wild gameplay loop is you first off, the story is like anime bananas. So if you can't either ignore that or you don't enjoy that, like that, it's a lot. There's a lot of, I'm fine with it because of the time I grew up in history. Like, yeah, bring it on. Stephen Bloom, the guy who voiced Spike in Cowboy Bebop, even does the voice of the main character. So it's like
nice.
90s anime all the way down. So it's first person shooter style camera. You have to get from point A to point B, and you have to kill all the monsters between point A and point B. That's it. A level takes, like, I would say for the first 70% of the game, most of the levels can be done in less than 60 seconds. So they're super short, and they're little self-contained puzzles. There usually isn't 400 different ways to get through a level, but the thing is, there are like 5 different ways to get through the level. And the first way is the obvious way. The second way is like, oh, okay, that was like a little tiny bit faster. And then like ways 3, 4, and 5 are maybe you would not have even thought of that on your own, but it's so much faster. And because you get rewarded for how quickly you finish the level, that's where the like, how much precision 3D platforming do I, the player, want to choose to engage in? Like that's where that element kind of comes in. Because the levels are super short and you can like trigger button to restart it basically any time, it becomes more like kind of the feeling of like if you were trying to master like a really tricky like guitar lick where you don't play the entire 3-minute song over and over. You play just that part that you're trying to master, right? Those like 8 bars or whatever, just like as fast as you can. You'll start slow and then speed it up. And it's really satisfying because the game just makes you feel like you're good at video games. Like you do these dashes and these double jumps and you shoot this thing and it explodes, which rockets you over here. And so you shoot that guy like as you're falling because it's faster than like landing on the ground and then shooting him. So you just feel like a badass all the time, which is like fun, right? The thing you might like about it, just because it's like the veneer is shallow, but it's the kind of thing that you might be like, oh, this tickles like a certain part of my brain. The guns that you pick up are cards. And so if you fire the gun, the card like grays out. So like I think the pistol is yellow. So like as you fire your pistol and you run through ammo, the color like goes out of the card. Or you can discard the card and use its special ability, but now you don't get to shoot it anymore. But you can discard it regardless of how much ammo it has. So what you end up having to do in the early part of the game is either obviously shoot the gun or obviously discard the gun and use whatever its special power is. And then by the end part of the game, you have to like shoot, then discard, then get this other one, shoot, discard, then get this other one, and then shoot all the way down to where it has 1 shot left and then discard it, right? So like where you really lose your margin for error in the back part of the game. Like you basically have to perform near perfectly.
So it's like a weapon from Borderlands.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So it's really fun. The story is dumb as hell, but honestly, personally, I love the story. Like it's so dumb, it's so cheesy, it's so 90s anime, and I am totally cool with that. So but
there's Demon Face Man and
they're all
Face
demon
Girl?
face people. So really broadly, the story is you die and you're a bad person in life, so you go to hell. And then every year or every 10 years or something, demons try and invade heaven. So angels bring bad people up from heaven because they're good at killing people. So they bring you there to kill demons. So the masks have explosives in them.
So you're a white hat.
Yeah. Yeah. Basically. Yeah. It's like, oh, you are a criminal, but it's catch me if you can. Like, come be a criminal for good.
Come be a criminal for me because you know how to criminal.
Yes. So it's really silly and dumb, but the gameplay loop is super fun. Like I said, I actually haven't finished it because the difficulty spike is bananas, but I think you would enjoy the gameplay loop a little bit because the collectible card mechanic, but the collectible card mechanic gets deeper when you're trying to do some of the side challenges, because then you don't spend them in the obvious way to do traversal. You have to spend them in stupid ways to try and like do traversal they don't want you to do, or to like find a hidden item that you like give to someone, which advances the story. So it's very dumb and fun. And I don't know if I'll actually finish it because like I got out of it the feeling of I'm good at video games that I wanted. And now the difficulty has spiked so much, I'm losing that feeling a little bit, which is making the game lose a little bit of its attraction for me.
Well, and also too, I mean, you know me, I'm the king of this game has ceased to bring me joy. I am not going to finish it. Like, I remember at one point, and this still drives Megan off the wall. I forget the name of the series, but it's this big 3-part series written by famous author about
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. That's the one. That's the one I couldn't remember. But each one was like a tome of like, you know, it's 500 pages, right? You know, and so I read the first book, it was amazing. Read the second book, fantastic. Third book in the trilogy, stopped 10 pages short of the end and just never picked it back up. And that's like nails on a chalkboard to Megan. And she said, "Why don't you want to finish?" I'm like, I mean, I got the gist. You know? I know what they were going to say, you know? And she's like, but what if they said something different? I'm like, I don't think so. It's fine, though. Like, I'm happy with the joy this book has brought me, and I'm happy with the ending I have in my head. So I'm good. Yeah, we're done. And that just, yeah. So,
and if you can
no
get,
notes from me on abandoning it.
If you can get Neon White on PlayStation Extra, whatever it's called right now, I would say that would be the ideal way for you to play it, because the game loop it doesn't have the ups and downs of Celeste's like tension and release cycle of here's a bunch of frustrating gameplay and then here's some like release cycle in the story mode, because the difference is the gameplay really incentivizes you to go faster, right? Because there's like badges, so it's like, or medals or whatever, so it's like bronze medal and silver medal, gold medal, and then the blue medal, spirit medal, I don't know, it has some name. But so if you get to the silver medal, you don't get the same reward as if you get to the gold or the blue medal. So now you're like, okay, I'm going to sit here and just like grind this level until I can get it. Okay, I got to shave off another like 10th of a second. Okay, another like 25th of a second. Okay, another like 500th of a second. Okay, bam, now I nailed it. And because you control how long you do that, the tension and release cycle is a variable length that is sometimes harmful to your health. You will put too much time in.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing, is that sometimes, you know, as we've said before on the podcast, game developers need to protect you from you, you know, because there have definitely been times where I was like, I'm the person putting this additional like layer of difficulty. I'm the one who's trying to get the happy chemical drip from getting the blue medal, you know? I don't need this, you know? And fortunately, in my old age, I've gotten better at recognizing when I'm starting to exhibit that behavior and putting it down. But man, once in a while, everybody rolls that natural one. And then the worst thing is that, I don't know if this is true for you as well, but when I do fail my wisdom save and roll that natural one, I am fully thralled by the game. So I'll snap at people, you know, like, because, you know.
No, you become a belligerent defender of your own bad decisions.
Yes. And all of a sudden I'm like 14 again. And my mom is saying, well, maybe if you're so mad at the game, you should just turn it off. I'm like, no, guess what, the game's fun. You know, and so then, you know, I've got to calm down. And to your point of it being 3D Celeste, Teddy has picked Celeste back up, which is, and I had this like, because parenting's all about, you know, dizzying highs and crashing lows, right? You know, had a couple of lows this week, but one of the highs was literally I came downstairs because he was playing Celeste. I went upstairs to use the bathroom, come back downstairs, and I hear the poof, right? You know, I can't see the TV yet, and I just hear this. I was like, yes. Good. Are you breathing to calm yourself down?
He's like, those emotions.
And he's like, yeah, I just needed to breathe for a second. And I was like, good. You know, and I was like, oh man, that game just did maybe 10 years of saved me 10 years of psychology or psychiatry or added 10. I don't know, but you know, yeah. So to your point, you know, sometimes games where they don't build in those rails for you can be problematic.
Yeah. Tell me about how you are going off the rails on Darkest Dungeon, because this has got to be your fourth circle back, maybe more.
Yeah, it's at least my third. With this particular playthrough, one of the things that and I've done stuff similar to this in the past, but I think I finally got the formula right, which is in the past what I would do is I'd name the characters after people that I actually knew, because then it would like make it more intense when they were getting hurt. But then, you know, when they died, just be like, oh, well, now this person is Joe number 2 or David the third or whatever, you know, it's their child. So this time through, I decided to name it again after people I know, mostly people that I work with, you know, because I'm playing it with a work friend, you know? Yeah. So this has added a number of different things, additional constraints, which is one. He was like, oh man, you gotta get this one character class, and I was like, yeah, I mean, I've got 2 of those. It was a plague doctor. He's like, oh, plague doctors are the best. You have to get at least a third one. I was like, I've got 2. I don't know if I can get a third. And he's like, are they not showing up for you? I'm like, no. I just don't know who I'd name them after,
So the name has to match the class.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I said, I named myself the one of the Crusaders because I'm like, they're big and tanky, and I'm not very religious, but like the way they function, because sometimes it can be based off of mechanics, it could be based off of looks, but if I can somehow say, like the plague doctor is named after one of my peers who's just very methodical and careful with the way that he approaches things, I'm like, yeah, it feels kind of like a doctor, the barbarian is named after somebody who, she's just very, very passionate, and so, yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, that feels right. All of the occultists are named after our IT people because that feels kind of like a cult, like they've got a whole bunch of knowledge that nobody really understands, and one of them is a guy I played D&D with, and I was going through one adventure and he was in my party, and one of the occultist abilities is that instead of the Vestal will heal for like 7 to 8 hit points, the occultist heals for 0 to 19 hit points, right? So dizzying highs, crashing lows, right? And so I was going in through like a dungeon and he heals for 1 hit point. And I was like, well, that was a wasted turn. Let's try that again. So the next round comes around, heals for 2 hit points. And I was like, okay, this is becoming more and more dire. Heals for 0 hit points and causes bleed. And I was like, and the character's name is Obi, which is the name of the person. I was like, okay. So then I went to play D&D and I said, Obi, look at me. Get your together, okay? I'm playing this game and you have been a disaster the last 2 times I brought you into the dungeon. I will kick you out, which actually brings me to the next thing is I won't dismiss people. So when I bring them off of the carriage, if I see...
Can they become broken beyond repair?
No, it's just how expensive are they to repair?
Okay, but no one in your party is like irredeemable.
No, they're all fixable, just like real people, and that's kind of where I'll get to, which is the main thing I think is so fascinating about this game. But they can never become broken beyond repair. But so the thing is, I won't when I pull people off of the carriage, and I don't name them immediately, but the minute that they go on an adventure, I name them. And then they're part of the narrative, right? Which means I won't dismiss them, So no matter how poorly they fit or how all of this sort of stuff, I'm like, no, I can't just dismiss Obi. He's that make me a monster,
he's
right?
Part of the team.
Yeah, he's part of the team now. I gotta carry these people. So that, and then when people die, it's upsetting, because like. Literally, the first one I lost was somebody actually that I named from my QA team, and I told her about this. Like everybody that I work with knows, so they're like, yeah, this is kind of fun. So I said, like, Jan, I'm so sorry I lost you, man. Like I just, there was nothing I really could have done. You took a critical hit, which dropped you to 0 hit points, which put you on death's door, and you were bleeding, and then that first bleed damage immediately caused a death blow. I didn't have, no one could heal you before you died, and you went from like 3/4 health to nil health in 1 round, So I was like, there's nothing I could do. I'm sorry, She's like, well, I have it go around. I'm like, oh no, you had the best run, like you did so good.
Yeah, champ, you saved the town.
Yeah, and so then about once every 50 weeks, like 50 sessions, there's a chance that you can bring someone back to life, and I've only lost 3 people so far. So now all of a sudden it's like, which one of these people do you want to bring back? I was like, it's got to be Jan, man. So I texted her triumphant and said, Jan, I brought you back. This is great news. And then the response was, weren't you supposed to be hanging out with your wife today? And I said, shut up.
Jan, this is why I let you die in the first place.
Yeah, you know what? No one's talking to you, Jan. Get back to work, both in the game and in real life. But no, so that's the additional layer of difficulty I have foisted upon myself. Is this and literally it's already had in-game repercussions. Where at one point myself and Steve got hit with like a big attack. Right, so we're both we're both a little low on health. And I was like, it makes more sense to heal Steve because he's a little bit lower on health and he has the bleed damage. But I like me more than Steve. So I'm going to heal me. I just play one less degree fast and loose with myself, So anyway, so that's that. But the thing that I think is so awesome about this game is the way that it is, I honestly think, a great training tool for managers because you are the manager in this scenario, right? Like you bring people into your employ and you have to deal with most of the time in most fields you don't have to deal with people's hit points, but and are you familiar with the stress mechanic in the game?
Yeah, once you are stressed beyond some certain amount, I think the player, lose control of the character. Is that right? So like they start
a little bit.
Yeah, they start acting erratically, or like you can't control them on a given turn.
Yeah, so basically is that, they get stressed, and once they hit half stress, half of their full amount of stress that they can have, they can either become virtuous or lack of virtue, right? So, and virtuous is like a 10% chance. It's really, really low, right? Most of the time they'll become abusive or fearful or masochistic, like some type of affliction to where their mind's broken a little bit, and so then they will be. If they're masochistic and you try to heal them, sometimes they'll just say like, "No, I want to be hurt," and you can't heal them for that turn. They will berate your party, like So one person will hit something and they'll say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were trying to kill it." So that will stress the rest of your party out because they become belligerent. They're awful. It's not great, right? And the thing is that hit points heal at the end of every adventure. Stress does not.
Right.
So stress carries over and diseases carry over, right? And so you have to treat those, and that costs money, right? And so the thing is that, like, if all of a sudden you have somebody who is, stressed out of their mind, they've got 3 diseases, there's a new person waiting in the wagon right there,
Right. And if I recall correctly, because it's been a while since I played it, the things that relieve stress, it's not like a potion. It's like, oh, this person relieves stress like at this shop, and this person relieves stress at this other place. So early in the game, you may literally not even have access to the thing that relieves stress.
So you will always have access. Correct. Like there's the bar and the
church, I think.
The church,
Yeah.
right? And the bar has 3 different ways to relieve stress, and the church has 3 different ways to relieve stress. And they can also get different. They all get different like positive quirks and negative quirks. So they get more stressed in certain areas, or one of them, can become obsessed with death. And so if there's like certain types of curios in the dungeon, they will forcibly search them. Like they take the option away from you. Kleptomaniac is one of them, where they will open up a bag and then they take all of the loot. Like you don't get it. They just pocket it all. Like it and there are also positive quirks. But actually what happened was literally one of the quirks is called Deviant Tastes, right? Which means you cannot go to the brothel to relieve stress. You're not allowed in there.
Oh,
for
no.
reasons. Yeah. It says, quote, "for reasons best left to discretion."
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the first person to get that in my party was Steve's character, who I play D&D with, right? So I just took a picture of it and I sent it to him and I said, "What did you do?" and he says, "I would appreciate your discretion in this matter," right? And then one of the other guys I played D&D with also happened to get Deviant Tastes. And so I sent a picture to him. I'm like, okay, at this point, am I missing something? Like maybe, am I weird?
No.
Yeah, right. Like, what do you all know that I don't? And he said, "Here's the thing, man. Sometimes you go to the brothel on a Tuesday morning and they'll do certain things." And I said, like, if it's anything like a strip club on a Tuesday morning, I don't think I want to do that. And he goes, "And thus Deviant Tastes."
Right.
I was like, all right, well,
hence the need for discretion.
Correct. Yeah. So I say all of that to say that, so initially, so then, and you can upgrade the carriage, which brings you more recruits, and you can upgrade the guild, which lets you train people to be more powerful. So as they level up, because that's the other interesting thing is when they level up, they don't get new abilities. Like it only reduces how much stress they get from being in the dungeon because it's their resolve level. If you want them to be better at stuff, you have to train them,
Right. So levels are kind of meaningless.
Well, no, the levels, caps how much they can be trained, right? So
I see.
So if you resolve level 3, then you can have up to level 3 skills, but you have to pay them. That's, you can't be level 1 with level 3 skills, but you can be level 3 with level 1 skills.
Right.
Yeah. So I say all of that to say that, everything I read online said, here's what you do is if you want to maximize for the game, you upgrade the coach, right? And just, the minute somebody becomes stressed or problematic, you kick them out and you get a new person in, right? And I was like, well, that is a very distinct philosophy. I'm going to see if you can actually be a good manager in this game, and if that's possible, and how's the game incentivize it. And I actually make the argument that the game incentivizes being a good human, because on its face, you think it incentivizes you to just treat people like cattle and like move them through the system and grind. But when you go into the dungeon, if you make sure that the things that the people are doing isn't overwhelming, because they'll let you overwhelm them, right? But if you're like, no, you're level 4, so you can do like a medium or an easy quest. So I'm going to go ahead and let you do an easy one, get you a little bit more powerful. I won't send you into the dungeon unless you have the best possible equipment for it, and I am going to take care of you. So I'm going to upgrade the things that make you more effective as a human, as opposed to upgrading the thing that allows me to throw you to the wolves and bring a new person in to replace you. And I have played through, like I said, up to this point in the game, and normally you would have lost dozens of people. I've only lost 3, And so the game actually, I think, and this is the thing I think is so fascinating, is that on its face, it says like, yeah, if you want to be successful and get things done in the world, you have to treat people like objects and treat them like numbers, and they're numbers in a spreadsheet, and push them through, right? But I'm like, no, I don't think that that's the message of the game. I think that the message, if you do that, that's on you, because it's still, the game still gives you, the player, a choice of what type of manager you're going to be. And the thing is, you can be a good manager. It takes a lot more work, and it's more time consuming, just like in real life, but it can be done.
Is there? I'm hopefully they did not intend this when they designed the game, because that would be, well, I don't know, maybe interesting. But is there like a critique of late stage capitalism here, which is if you completely disregard human life, that's how you become a billionaire, right? Like Jeff Bezos loses no sleep over his delivery people pissing in bottles. He loses sleep over that being in the news, right? It's not that it's happening, it's that he's catching flack for it. So you have to have a complete disregard for human life to reach the highest levels of success, which in this case would be like having the easiest path to beating the game, or beating the game the fastest, right? Where you just grind through people and you have a machine that brings in new, better people because, hey, you're Amazon or you're the Walt Disney Corporation or you're Google, and people just want to work for you, the ancestor, right? So there's that method. And then there's you can still reach super high levels of success, but it's a little slower. It takes a little more work. It doesn't seem as obvious up front because you have to invest more. And that can also bring you tremendous success. Where the failure lies is in the middle, right? Because like a lot of virtues, the true middle path is actually not virtuous. It is like lazy virtuous. So if you have a strong regard for human life, but only when it's like really bad, when there's really bad press, or when, someone who like, oh, my family just had a new baby, please don't send me into the dungeon. And it's like, well, I guess I'll give you a break. But this other guy who's got a sick aunt, like, I don't really care about that as much. So he's going into the dungeon, right? And then like, so sometimes you're making spreadsheet decisions and sometimes you're trying to make empathetic human decisions. Like that way lies madness, right? That way lies failure, because it's like you have picked the worst parts of both systems. You are investing and then sometimes losing your investments, and then other times you refuse to invest, and then you have to go into battle with these people you have not invested in, that you're like, oh no, we lost Jonathan, I feel so bad about this. And it's like, now you've picked the worst half of both of those extremes.
Well, and the interesting thing too is that so yes, I would agree with that, is that you either need to be a complete sociopath or be a complete altruist, right? And I think that it's similar to Nier Automata, is that being virtuous is actually being virtuous because it takes more time on you, the player. Like, you have to spend more time doing the thing that, you know, if you were just willing to throw people at the wolves, you'd throw them in there with like little regard, like no equipment, no whatever. If you tell them to leave before completing the mission, that stresses them out. But if you're just going to throw them away anyways, doesn't really matter, you know. Spend all of your money on like maybe the top 1%, you know, your real crew, you know, and then just grind through everybody else. You will get through the game faster. If you do it the way I did, it takes substantially longer, but it actually is, I believe, the better way to go. But it took more time for me, George, you know, so it's actually you know, it's not like, oh, well, if I do the altruistic thing, the game will reward me. It's like, no, it won't. It will tacitly punish you by taking away more of your life. But it is the correct, the virtuous thing to do. And I really like games that kind of give you that degree of automata.
It's almost like, because as far as I know, currently video games are not actually sentient. So when you put a game like this in front of someone, or any game where they have to really kind of go out of their way to make empathetic moral choices for things that are things, right? They're not, you've named them after people you know to help fool your brain into caring about them, but they don't actually have feelings, right? They're not really under stress. But there's kind of like certain kinds of games can work on your hand-eye coordination. You could probably make a similar argument that it's like, oh, certain kinds of games can work on like your ability to work through empathy as a way to make decisions. Like, how do you as a person make an empathetic choice given a complicated, messy circumstance, right? And I respect that there's probably one of our listeners right now who's like, you guys, oh my Lord, what are you doing? Like this
game.
This game is not a training tool for how to make empathetic people. We have better tools for that. Yes, we absolutely have better tools for training empathetic people, but we also have better tools for teaching hand-eye coordination. Like there is some silver lining in here about how you get a person to, as a reflex, go through the steps of, what do I need to do to make this person successful? Not what do I need to do to make the numbers line up to because there's plenty of games like that. If you just want to make all the numbers at the bottom of the spreadsheet black instead of red, like that, there are tons of games like that. Factorio exists, right? Like you could play a game like that. But I played Darkest Dungeon and I remember bailing on it because I was like, this game is asking something of me. Like, I don't want to pay this price. Right. But the framing device that you're giving to it, even though it's completely self-imposed, I'm kind of
like, maybe. Well, and one of the other things too that I think is, because I do think that this game is management 101 in the same way that being a DM in D&D is management 101, right? It's like you got to keep everybody rowing in the same direction and chide people who start rowing in the wrong direction, but not so hard that they quit. You know, like, you know, it's that. I mean, but like one of the other things I found very helpful is that, you know, there are mini bosses, you know, before like the big boss, you know. And so when you go through, and first of all, oh my God, the stories behind them are just, I mean, whoever they got to do the ancestor just tens across the board, man. He's just amazing, you know. And there's one particular person who's the prophet whose story I think is the best. But when you go in to face them, you win the stage when you beat this big bad, right? So what I have to constantly remind myself of while I'm going through that is I am here to do one thing, and that is beat that big bad, which means that there's any side stuff that I would normally do, additional treasures, anything I could do to make this run more successful is not the point of this run. The point of this run is to kill that guy, you know? And so that's very helpful because then if I kill him and I'm still in great shape, I'm like, okay, we can like loot around a little bit more, but
so you can you choose when you leave. It doesn't just like smash cut back to the town.
That's the awesome thing is once you complete the task, it gives you the option. It says you can go back to the hamlet or you can stay. And at that point you can leave whenever you want. You just can't leave in the middle of a battle, you know? And actually, so the prophet's story, so each one has 3 phases, like an easy, medium, and then hard. So each one you get a snippet of the story, right? So you'll get a snippet of the story, and then like 2 days later you'll get the next snippet, and which paces it really well. But basically, he says, you know, like, as I was working towards my end goal, a man came through prognosticating pretty much exactly what I was doing, you know? He goes like, and that became troublesome, you know? And this person is like in stocks, and he's like blindfolded, and he's holding something in his hand, and like one of his hands out of the stocks. He's got knives in his back, and you're like, what's going on with this guy? And so the second one is he says, you know, the resiliency of the prophet truly staggered me. He seemed to continue to bounce back from, you know, the frigid lake or the knives I imposed ever so enthusiastically into his back. You know, but no matter what, he kept coming back, right? And then he says, after his resiliency proved to be a match for me, the next time he returned, I took him into the basement and I showed him my grand work. And then I watched gleefully as he tore the eyes from his own face. And then you realize that that's what he's holding in his hand.
Right.
You know? And it's just like, God, what were you doing, man? And there's one other thing that the game does, and this is my old spoiler for this game, and then I'll stop gushing. But this is what we're here for. Is that so? I did beat the first round of the Darkest Dungeon before, right? And I had what I imagined the game developers wanted for this experience. So this is a minor spoiler, right? But is that so? You beat the first round of it, right? And so I'm like, okay, and it's 11 o'clock at night because I've been playing for a while, so it's dark. I'm tired. I'm alone because Megan was out of town, you know. And so the perfect setup for this, right? And so I was like, do I want to do the next round of this? Like, I can maybe I should stop. And then I looked up, and they have the little portraits of everybody going down the side, and one of the portraits looked like the monster I just killed, right? And I was like, what? And I looked, and it wasn't there anymore. And I was like, I'm looking this up right now. I was like, I need to know right now if the game's with me, you know? And it was. Like, that's what it's been. And he does a whole bunch of other little things, but like that, where it you know, little sanity checks. But I was like, that feeling of self-doubt, I was like, that's what they wanted. And some developer somewhere got their wings, you know?
Yeah, right. Now there's there's no better game than would you call this gothic horror? Does this count as gothic horror? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm never quite sure what the gothic modifier refers to.
Normally it refers to so typically the big large buildings, gloomy area, vampires, werewolves, Victorian era, like that typically falls under gothic horror. There's also like cosmic horror,
the spooky version of like medieval fantasy.
Yeah, it's spooky medieval fantasy. I would say that this one also towards the end drifts into like it actually uses all not all of them, but the three I'd say it uses gothic horror is like kind of the theming. It also does a fair amount of body horror, you know, where like
a lot of the monster design.
Yeah, it falls under body horror, and then towards the end, I think it leans heavily on cosmic horror, you know, which is we're so small in the universe, and there's things 10 times bigger than us that could kill us without thinking, kind of a thing.
Yeah, I don't remember if I ever told you this, but the last time you were deep in the Darkest Dungeon, and we were talking about it, I was like, am I ever going to finish this game? No, I'm not. I want to know what the project was. So I just went and looked it up. So
nice.
So
nice.
Like I do actually have like a rough idea of like what he was doing and like what the final boss and kind of like the conclusion of the narrative is like. And yeah, it strays into cosmic horror.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah. No, I think I'm going to give like this one last like real thrust into it. And then if I can't beat it this time, because the next one's coming out, I'm just going to look it up. But yeah, because the last time I beat the first dungeon, went into the second one, catastrophic failure. So I lost 3 people and did not beat it, you know. Went in again, lost another 2 people, and the other 2 people that I had were very broken by the end of it. And I was like, and I just set it down and then didn't come back to it, you know. I just got distracted. But I was like, no, this time it's way worse, because I'm like, I'm literally at the point where now I'm like, okay, I've beaten all the mini bosses, I've built all the structures, I've kind of done all the infrastructure building that I reasonably can do, and I'm like, I need to go in there, man. If I'm going to beat the game, I got to do this, but I don't want to lose Steve. And January just came back, and I don't know, man. Like, there's just they might not make it, you know.
So this is an important mechanical question. because I recently played Final Fantasy VIII, which I will crap on probably in the next episode if we do of this. That game does something that not all Final Fantasies do. In fact, I would say most Final Fantasies don't do, which is monsters scale with the party, right? So you think of like JRPG, you can grind your way out of any problem, and that is possible in Final Fantasy VIII when you're leaning into its mechanics, but you can't just say, oh, I am now a higher level than all the monsters, because that moment actually never comes, right? Which is, it's a choice, right? Like not all Final Fantasies work that way, and not all RPGs tend to work that way. Does Darkest Dungeon have any mechanism to grind up to success, or is there a ceiling that even when you reach it, the game is still hard? Like, can you have a super powered party and just go in and trounce the last boss if you're willing to pour a bunch of time into it?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so.
Yeah, because that would be very antithetical to, what and
everything.
Actually, to the entirety of the game. And actually, what they do is, would argue even more insidious, is that there's 3 levels. There's 4 levels of difficulty. There's easy, medium, hard, and darkest. And so, and so all of the monsters. So if you go to the coves and you do an easy adventure, all of the monster models are the same. They all have lower hit points, and their to hit is lower, and all this sort of stuff. So if you're level 1 in an easy adventure, it'll be moderately difficult, right? But you can be up to level 4 and still do easy adventures. At that point, once you become level 5, they literally say, "I am beyond this. You are wasting my time."
Oh, that's right, and they will piss off.
They just will refuse to do that quest.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So there is, like, they will only do things they think are worth their time, which means you can't possibly level them beyond.
Right. Well, there's that
cap.
aspect of it. Right. But that's the thing, is that if you go into an easy quest with level 4 people, you're gonna walk through it pretty easily, right? To the point where I actually stress tested it a little bit, and I snuffed all of my candles, and I went through the whole dungeon like in complete darkness, and I still actually came out relatively okay. God, the music is so amazing, because the music changes the darker it gets, and it's so intense, especially because I was in the Warrens, which is where the pig monsters are, and there is consistent squealing of pigs in the background when you let the switch get that low, and it's just eerie and unsettling. And I was like, mechanically, this makes sense. George, may not be able to deal with this for too much longer. Like, I don't like this. I'm going to turn on a candle because
my stress meter is filling.
Yeah, But then, so the thing though is that the Darkest Dungeon is of darkest difficulty, which means that anybody, I think, level 5 or lower won't touch it. They literally say, like, don't. It's suicide. Like, if you send me to this, I'm going to die. But even with level 6, it's difficult, So the thing is that, like, if you do what I've been doing, which is, you always send them to like lower level stuff than what they can handle, so that way you build them up and you get them the best equipment, you actually can get a little complacent with how difficult the game is. So then when you do something that's appropriately leveled, now all of a sudden you're like, what do you mean I missed again? No, come on, man. Like, focus,
Well, and there's also just like straight up random chance, right? Because not only are the monsters harder, and they hit harder, and they cause different status abilities and stuff more frequently, but like, you may also just have a run of bad luck. So you might go in, is 6 the highest level? Yeah, so you might go in, a full party that's fully leveled. They're well balanced, because there's a bunch of different classes, right? So like, you have a group that works well together, right? Just like you would want to do with like a project team, like,
right? Exactly, right.
They got everything they need
together.
They're cohesive, like, and just
and then COVID, like, that's absolutely, Yeah, that's absolutely a thing that can happen. And the thing is that they give you a ton of information, so you can highlight a person and it'll say, like, you've got an 85% chance to hit this guy, and you're like, all right. And it'll say miss. And you're like, all right. Next person, 85% chance to hit this guy. And you're like, take that swing, miss. And you're like, okay. All right, I can take it on the chin twice, but I need this next one to hit. Miss. And you're like, okay, that's like a 1 in 200 chance of that happening. And so then all of a sudden you're like, you start to become paranoid, and you're like, is it actually an 85% chance game? Or are you messing with me? And are you changing stuff under the hood? Because I do think that, just having played it as much as I do think that there's, they pick the struggle they want you to have, and then change the math a little bit, because there was one time where one of the things you have to do is pick up like a certain type of curio, right? You have to go through, pick it up, right? And I had the antiquarian in my party, which means I was getting tons of extra loot, right? I was getting a lot of extra loot. And the problem is, as the ancestor will tell you, is packs laden with loot are often low on supplies, you know? And so the problem was I got to the very end because I was like, okay, there's 2 curios up in the corner. It has to be, the last thing I'm looking for has to be one of those 2. And I wasn't touching anything else because that's not what I'm there for. I'm there for this thing. And so I go check both areas. Neither one was the thing I was looking for. And I look back through this huge dungeon. I'm like, that means I missed it. And it's one of these. And I was like, and I don't have enough food to backtrack all of this way. I've got all of this stuff in my bag, but I don't have enough supplies to go backtrack this far. So I was like, I think I can make it. You know? So I start backtracking, and then they're like, hey, your team's hungry and you don't have any food. So you let them starve. And I'm like, I don't have another option. So they lose like a third of their hit points and get really, they really hate it when you starve them. You know, they get upset. So they get really stressed out. I'm like, all right, guys, come on. It's got to be this one. Get a little bit farther, and they're like, hungry again. Weird. They're just getting really hungry a lot. And I'm like, all right, guys, I can see it. Like, just starve one more time for me. And now I've got one that's abusive, and the other one's become hopeless. You know, like, so they're falling apart, man. One of them's so stressed out that they when their stress gets all the way to the top, they risk a heart attack and dying. You know, so they're 2 pips away from heart attack levels of stress. And I get to that curio, and it wasn't the thing I was looking for, which means it's one of the other ones. And I was like, oh, guys, that's it. We got to pack it in, man.
Pack it in. We did our best.
Yeah. Wrap it up. So I sent them all home, and they all survived. And, you know, like, I was like, all right. And then I had to put one of them in the sanitarium, you know, and just like unknot the stressed mess I had made here. And I was like, all right, well, you're going to need to flagellate yourself. That's the only way to get you de-stressed fast enough. And then one of them went missing afterwards, because that's a thing that can happen. They can just off for sorry, I'm swearing a lot. They can just screw off for like a round and just put a question mark. And normally I'm like, what the hell? But this time I was like, no, I get it. Actually, like, that was a bad one, guys. Like, you take the time you need, you know?
Aren't you going to go after him? No, he'll come back when he's ready.
He'll come back when he's ready. And actually Steve said to me, because he's also playing through, he said, like, as I said, yeah, it took me like 4 rounds, because, you know, while they are idle, they're doing stuff. And so you have to go into the dungeon with other people, right? I was like, it took me 4 rounds to like properly unknot that mess that I had made. And Steve goes, well, I mean, you know, there's an easy way to get around that. And I said, well, what? And he goes, well, just send 4 people into the dungeon, immediately have them leave, and then dismiss them. And I said, yeah, that's a way to do that, but I don't want to be that CEO. That's not me, you know?
It's not the company we're running here at Ancestor Corp.
Yeah, that's the, you know, anyways, but yeah, it's a good game. I recommend it.
I have a suspicion, just looking through the backlog of topics here, is like, oh man, we touched on like 2 of these, right? Because like the game does it, even in the brief time I played Darkest Dungeon, like there's like 1,000 things it's doing to support the horror, which I feel like you have to do. You could be lazy about fantasy. I feel like lazy horror comes across more obviously, right? So we're probably going to hear about Darkest Dungeon again.
Oh, almost certainly. And actually, I thought of a great. I know I shared this with you, but I think this is the best analogy, which is it's like a comedian said, like, jump scares in horror is lazy. That would be like if a comedian went into the audience and tickled everybody and said, well, you laughed, I did my job, you know, like. So to your point, right, is it, yeah, lazy horror, it's like, oh no, you jump, no, okay, you know, but yeah, this it does a lot of work to be like, you're really tiny, you know that, right?
You small little player. I don't think we have like a formal way to wrap these up yet, so if you want to give us feedback about what you think about this episode structure, and you made it this far, now's the time to do that. Because if you made it all the way to the end, you'll probably say it was good. So now we're asking for feedback about this episode structure. Is that fair? Or are we biasing the audience too much by doing that? I don't think so.
No. Except for the fact that if you give us good reviews, and if we get 10,000 likes, then lions will slap me into a pool. So
This is definitely a true thing that is now a verbal contract.
exactly. Because that's one of the things. Oh, maybe instead of doing the names for the patrons on this one, that's what I can do is the new $1,000 thing, the $1,000 tier,
$1,000 tier,
yeah.
You know what? This is our space now. We could do anything.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play, not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We both know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for the ride.